Hello and welcome to Pabbly Connect. So this video is going to be a complete guide on how to integrate Auth 2.0 based applications inside Pabbly Connect. And to do so, you just require two basic things. First one is a API doc of the application and the second thing is a Pabbly Connect account. So let's begin. So as you can see over here we are on the Pabbly Connect's dashboard. Now after reaching to this dashboard guys, to reach the app integration page, you just have to go to the URL section and here after connect.pabbly.com, you have to enter /app. And here guys, you can see that we have reached to Pabbly Connect's app integration page. Now to create an app, just click on create new app button, give your application a name and click on save. So guys, here in this video, just for a reference, we are taking an example of HubSpot CRM, that how we have integrated HubSpot CRM in Pabbly Connect. So HubSpot CRM is also an application based on Auth 2.0 based authentication. So here let's switch to the HubSpot CRM integration. And here guys, after creating or naming your application, the first thing what you have to do is to give your application a name. And after naming it, just add some description of the application, that what does this application do. Then you have to enter or upload the app logo, and the logo should be 64 x 64 inch pixel. Moving ahead, now you have to select the auth type of the application. So here, for example, we are taking reference of Auth 2.0 based application in this video. So select Auth 2.0 over here. And here guys, in auth type, you can see different auth type as well. So let's select Auth 2.0, then select the grant type. So in the drop down, we can see two options, authorization code and authorization code with PKC. So select the grant type for your application and then you can see that Pabbly Connect gave you the redirect URL. Now guys, specifically in HubSpot, what you have to do, you have to create an app inside HubSpot developer area. And after that, after creating that app, what we have done, we have received the token URL, client ID and client secret from HubSpot of that application. So we have entered all of these three details from there and we have received the authorization URL from the API doc of HubSpot. So in this way, you can basically enter the authorization details, authentication details over here. And after entering it, the next thing it asks us is the scope. So for what scopes you have created that application in HubSpot developer area, you have to enter the same scopes over here as well. Then set header prefix before access token and send client secret on access token, and like this, you can see several different options over here. So what kind of application you are integrating, you can select these options according to that. Then it is asking us client authentication. So in the drop down below, you can see there are two options, send as basic auth header and send client credentials in body. So you can select according to your application's API doc for the authentication as well. After entering or selecting all of these authentication details, just click on save. So in this way guys, what we have done, we have completed the first step or entering some basic application details. Now after this, let's move to step 2 and start building some triggers. For that, just go to the triggers section over here. And after reaching to this trigger section, just click on this create trigger button and then give your trigger event a name. Just enter the name for your trigger and click on save. So here guys, you can see that we have built multiple triggers over here for HubSpot CRM, out of which we will have a look on a trigger named as company updated. So what you have to do after naming the trigger, enter some basic details of the trigger event as well, like the name of the trigger event, the description of the trigger event, that what does this trigger event do. Then if you have a video tutorial on the trigger event, that how the trigger event of this application works, you can also add the URL for the video tutorial as well. Moving ahead, we have the trigger type, and this is pretty important. So in the drop down below, you can see Pabbly Connect offers 3 different types of triggers. First one is webhook setup by instruction. So in this case guys, the user who is using your application inside Pabbly Connect will give a webhook URL to the user, and that user can actually copy that webhook URL and manually paste it into their account of your application. So you just have to enter some kind of descriptions or instructions, and then by following those instructions, the user can enter the webhook URL and make the connection. The second type is webhook setup by API request. So if your application does not allow users to manually enter the webhook URL, but you support webhook by calling some API request. So in that case, you can select this kind of trigger event, and then the webhook URL will be added in your application by making an API request. And the third thing is polling to check new data. So if your application does not support webhooks guys, then you can select this. So in this case, guys, if you select polling to check new data, at a regular interval, guys, Pabbly Connect will pull some data from the application over here. So after selecting the polling to check new data, like HubSpot CRM does not have webhook, that's why we have built a polling kind of trigger. Then you can see the polling speed. So in the drop down below, you can see only one option by default, that is of 8 hours. So if you want to make changes in the polling speed for the application which you are integrating, you can contact the Pabbly Connect team as well. Then after selecting the polling speed, it is asking us trigger response type. So we have two options, either a simple response or an advanced one. I always want to get some simple response, so that I have selected simple response over here. Then if you have some kind of important help text or instruction to be given to the user who is using your application, you can enter that help text over here as well. And then just click on save. So in this way, guys, you can enter some basic details of the trigger which you are creating. After this, let's move on and start configuring this trigger event. So here, guys, when we scroll down, you can see some inbuilt action over here. So what is this inbuilt action and how does it works? We will see this in the later part of the video in a couple of minutes, guys. But first, we will scroll down and come to this trigger event API configuration. So at this section, guys, we have to actually configure that what does this trigger event do. So first thing which we have to select is the HTTP request method. So in the drop down below, we can see all of the 5 methods. Then you have to enter the API endpoint URL for the specific trigger. So you are making an API call, so just enter the endpoint URL. Select the request body type. So in the drop down below, you can see different body types like JSON, form data, encoded form data, text, HTML, and XML. Then do you want to wrap this response or wrap this data in array? Select yes or no. And then authentication. So from the drop down below, select Auth 2.0 authorization code and then click on connect. Now guys, to integrate an application and build some triggers and action, what you have to do, you have to actually connect your account of the application over here. Like we are integrating HubSpot. So first we have to actually sign into a HubSpot account and connect our HubSpot account over here with Pabbly Connect. But don't worry, guys, in real time, the user who is using your application in Pabbly Connect, this authentication details will be replaced by that user's details. So whatever account the user will be connecting in the front end, using that account, this automation or the connection will work. After that, it is showing us HTTP headers, and next thing is set body query path parameters. So if your application requires to get some kind of HTTP headers for each and every call, by selecting this and entering those headers over here, you can do that. And by clicking on the settings option, you can actually configure that how this HTTP header is going to work. But right now HubSpot does not require it, so that's why we haven't selected. And next thing what we have created is a parameter over here. Now guys, the API endpoint which we have created, using this API endpoint, you can get all the details or the updates of the company in our HubSpot account. But guys, to get these details, to get the updates of the company, first we have to give some properties to this endpoint. While making this API call, we have to mention some properties that for what properties we want to get this data. So in the front end, guys, we have to give our users a list of all the company properties which they have in the HubSpot CRM account. And to do so, first we have to get a list of all the properties from their HubSpot account so that we can give that list in a drop down to the users who is setting up this trigger in Pabbly Connect. And to do so, guys, what we have done, we have created an inbuilt action over here. So using this inbuilt action, guys, what we have done, we have received or collected a list of all the company properties from the user's account who is using this trigger. So whenever a user will select this trigger and connect their HubSpot CRM account, using this inbuilt action in the backend, guys, we will get a list of all the company properties from their account. And then we will show the same list over here to the user. Like here we have created a field, a body for properties. So we will show this complete list as a drop down to the user. And after that, whatever properties the user wants the company updates, they can select it. And on that basis, we will be making the API call. Now you must be thinking how you can build inbuilt actions over here like this. So guys, we will just scroll up and here you can see a section named as inbuilt action. Just click on it. And by clicking on create inbuilt action button, you can give your inbuilt action a name and click on save to create a new one. So the inbuilt action on which we are going to look on is named as get all company properties. Let's have a look. Let's open this inbuilt action. So as usual guys, you have to enter some basic details of the inbuilt action, like what kind of inbuilt action it is. So in the drop down, we have three different types: drop down and custom field, multi-step, and app auth validator. So you can select your action type, inbuilt action type over here. Then you have to give your inbuilt action a name and a description. Just click on save. And after that, in the next step, we have to actually configure this inbuilt action. So what kind of HTTP method which we are going to use, and what is the endpoint URL? So I have entered the endpoint URL of HubSpot CRM, which we have received from HubSpot API doc. By using this endpoint URL, by making this a call, an API call on this endpoint, we will get a list of all the company properties. So we have selected that. In authentication, once again, as you can guess, we have selected Auth 2.0, and then we have connected our HubSpot CRM account just to get some response. So it is while in creating some inbuilt actions, guys, it is very important to connect your account and get the responses. So that using that responses, we can use that response while building some triggers and actions as well in the later part. So we have connected an account. If the API doc or your application requires some HTTP headers, some bodies, or some raw JSON body request, you can add these as well. So HubSpot's this API endpoint does not require anything. So we just clicked on save. And after that, click on send test request. When we click on send test request, guys, the API call is made, and you will see in response, actually by making this API call, it has received some company properties from my HubSpot CRM account. So here one by one, like you can see a response of one company property right now in the front, but using this API call, it will get a list of all the company properties. And it is very important to get this response because we are going to use this response while setting up sub triggers and actions, which requires this inbuilt action. So in this way, you can create your inbuilt action. And after creating it, you can also use this inbuilt action in triggers and actions as well. Likewise, we are using it over here. So let's get back to trigger. And here you can see that by clicking on this plus button over here, you can actually add some kind of inbuilt actions. So here, after clicking on plus button, from the drop down below, you can see a list of all the inbuilt actions which you have created can be seen over here. So select the inbuilt action of your choice and click on save. So here guys, in this trigger event which we are creating, we required only one inbuilt action. So we have selected this. If your trigger events or action event requires more than one inbuilt action, you can also insert those over here. So here guys, we have received a list of all the company properties, and we have added a field of properties over here. So we want to show this list to the users in the front end. Now how we can configure this? So after adding the inbuilt action, we have to configure this field which we have created. So we have created a field named as properties. What name should be given over here? You have to give the exact same name which is given in the API doc of the application. Then after that, you can see here we have three options. We have this settings option, we have remove parameter, and add new parameter. So if you want to add multiple parameters or multiple fields over here, just click on this add new parameter button, and you can keep on adding in this way. And after creating these parameters, we have to configure it as well. So just click on this settings button, and here we have the configure field details option. Now the first thing you have to do is to give this field a name, this parameter a name. So the label name, whatever name you will be entering over here, the same name will be shown in the front end. Then you have an option to select that either this parameter which we are creating is a dynamic dropdown or a static dropdown. So the field which we are creating right now is a dynamic dropdown. So we have selected it, and then it is asking us option label and option value. And in the drop down below option label, we can see all the responses of the inbuilt action which we have added over here. So we have added an inbuilt action of get all company properties. And while creating that inbuilt action, by clicking on send test request, we have received some response. So receiving that response was this important, guys, because we have to map that same response over here as well. So in the drop down below, you can see a list of all the responses of company property over here. So guys, from the list of all the company properties, what name or what text or what data you want to show to the user in the front end in the drop down, you have to select that response over here in this option label section. So from the drop down, guys, I want to show the label of the company property to the user. So by selecting the label or reading the label, the user can select the property. So I will select result label over here. And after that, in option value, you can see the same response. Like right now, we have added only one inbuilt action. That's why we can see response of only one inbuilt action. But if you have multiple inbuilt action, you can see all of those responses over here. So in option label, guys, we have to select the value or the data which will be sent on the API call. So whatever data is required to send for the company property in the API call, you have to select that response over here. So I will be selecting result name over here. Then after this, guys, the next thing it asks us is the field type. So in the dropdown below, if you select a dynamic dropdown or static dropdown, we have two different options. Either this field can be a select field or a multi-select field. So the properties, a list of properties, a user can select multiple properties. User can get updates, company updates for multiple properties. So that's why I have selected multiple select field over here. Then if it is required, just select it. If this response or field or string is not required, you can unselect it over here. Then you can also add some kind of help text. After entering all of these details, just click on save. So in this way, we have created a parameter and we have also configured that parameter. And also, guys, we have added the responses for the inbuilt action which we have added over here. Then if the API request requires some raw JSON body, some raw JSON data, you can also create this request, JSON body request over here. And after that, just click on save and send test request. Now guys, after clicking on send test request, you will get some response of new updates over here. So by making this API call with all of these data, we have made an API call and we have received some response of the company updates from HubSpot CRM. But the response which we can see over here is in array format. So we have to first break this response into a simpler format. So for that, in the next step, by default, if you select a polling based trigger, so in the next step, by default, you can see an option named as simplify array response. So here in the step, in the dropdown below, you just have to select the response which is received in array. So here we have received this label response result in array. So by default, it has selected it, and then just click on send test request. And in simplify array response, you can see this complete response, the array format response is converted into simple response. So in this way, we have received this response in a simpler way. So here guys, using this API call, we will get all the updates of the company in Pabbly Connect. So in response, we will get all the updates. But we have created this trigger or polling based trigger and the polling speed is of 8 hours. This means every 8 hours, the data will be pulled from your application. But now we have to segregate that what is the recent response, what is the recent response or recent update which I have done in my HubSpot CRM in past 8 hours. So from all of that data, we have to segregate or extract the data of last 8 hours only. So how we can do that? So after simplifying this array response, guys, we have another step of new record order setting. So in this step, guys, we can actually configure how we can find that what is a new response, what is a different response, and how we can extract the latest response, the most recent response over here. So the first thing it asks us is unique record ID. So in the dropdown below, all the responses which we have received over here of company update, you can see a list of all of those responses. So out of all of this, you have to select a response using which you can identify that this is a unique response, this is a unique record. This can be a unique record ID or timestamp or anything like that. And after selecting it over here, you have to select sorting order. So in sorting order, we have two options, by position and by field. If you select by position, you also get to sort this data from top or from bottom. And by selecting sorting data or sorting order as by field, in the drop-down below, you can see the same responses, but you have to detect the response that on the basis of what response we will be segregating or sorting this data and find out at what is the most recent data. So and after selecting all of these guys, after setting up this new record order settings, just click on save. And this way, guys, you can basically create a trigger in application which is based on Auth 2.0 based authentication. And after building this trigger, basically what we are going to do, we are going to check this trigger in the front end. So we will just go to our Pabbly Connect dashboard. Let's create a workflow named as, for example, demo. This is the name of the workflow. And here in trigger window, we are going to select our same application. So the name of our application is HubSpot CRM clone. So let's search for this application, HubSpot CRM clone. Let's select it. And in trigger event from the drop down, we have to select the trigger event company update date. Then it is asking us to connect our HubSpot CRM account. Let's click on connect. And as I told you, the account, the HubSpot CRM account, the user which we is going to connect it, using that account, this automation or workflow will be created. So let me select my old existing account, existing connection. Let's click on save. And then you can see that the only thing it is asking us is the output property. So here while building this trigger, while configuring this trigger, we have created a field and we can see the same field over here. And in the dropdown below this field, we can see a list of all the company properties which we have received from our HubSpot account using this inbuilt action. So the inbuilt action stays in the backend. The user can't see it in the front end, but it keeps on working. So in this way, guys, we have successfully created this trigger. After this, let's move to creating some actions. So we will just go to the action section, actions. And after that, we will have a look on the action event named as add contact to deal. So using this action event, I'm adding some existing contact in my HubSpot CRM to a particular deal. So the process of building an action is also somewhat the same. First, you have to enter some basic details of the action over here. Then if you have a dedicated video on this action event, you can also add that video over here and also some kind of important text. Click on save after adding these basic details. Now here you can see that in this section also I have added some inbuilt action, and it is not just one, I have added two inbuilt actions over here. Why we have added it? Let's see, we'll just scroll down and come to the configuration section. So action event API configuration section, select the HTTP method and enter the endpoint URL for which you are building this action. Select the request body type, so it does not require any headers, so we haven't selected it. But this API endpoint, guys, using which we can add our contact in HubSpot CRM into a deal, this API endpoint requires two things. The contact ID of the contact, that to which contact we want to add to a deal, and the ID of the deal, the two object ID that in which deal you want to add that contact. Now for both of these things, we have to get both of these things from the user in the front end. They have to select it, the contact name, basically the contact and the deal. So we have created two fields over here. One is contact ID and second one is to object ID. And the name of both of these parameters is exactly the same given in the API doc. Now let's start configuring. Now to select the contact, first we have to get a list of all the contacts from our HubSpot CRM account. And to do so, guys, as you can guess, we have created an inbuilt action. So using this inbuilt action which we have created, fetch all contacts, we will get a list of all the contacts in our HubSpot CRM account. So whenever a user will select this action event, in the background, we will be fetching a list of all the contacts from the user's account and showing that contact list to the user in the dropdown. Now the next thing it asks us, the next parameter which we have created is to object ID. And in this to object ID, we have to mention the deal, that in which deal we want to add this contact. So for that, we have to get a list of all the deals which are present in our HubSpot CRM account. So here inbuilt, we have added another inbuilt action, and using this inbuilt action, we have received or collected a list of all the deals in our HubSpot CRM. So in this way, guys, we have added two inbuilt action in this action event which we are building, so that you can get an idea that you can add multiple inbuilt actions while creating some trigger event or action event as well. So using these two things, we get all the data which were required. Now we have to configure these parameters. For that, you can just click on the settings option and process remains the same. Give this field a name, that what label should be given in the front end. The label is contact identifier value. And then we have added the response of, we have added the contact list in a dynamic dropdown. And in the dropdown below, as I told you, because we have added two inbuilt actions, we can see a response of two inbuilt actions. The first field which we are configuring right now is of contact identifier. We have to select the contact. So from the responses of fetch all contact, we have selected the email address of the contact. So we will be showing the email address of the contact in the dropdown below in front end to the user. And in the backend, guys, the API call or the API endpoint requires the ID, the contact ID. So here in option value, we have selected the contact ID. Like whatever contact the user will be selecting, the ID or the contact ID of that particular contact will be sent with the API call. Then this field is required. It is mandatory. It is required to select the contact. So we have selected mark this field required. And also you can add some kind of help text over here. And also select some other options according to your choice over here. And then just click on save. Follow the same process for configuring the second parameter as well. So just click on this to object ID. The label of this object ID is deal ID. So we have to select the deal, that in which deal we want to add this contact. So here you can see that from the responses of get all deals, the inbuilt action which you have added, get all these deals, we have selected the deal name. We will be showing the name of the deal in the front end in the drop down to the user. And in response, guys, in the API request, we have to mention the deal ID. So in option value, we have selected the response of deal ID over here. And follow the same process over here. Add some help tags, select this mark field as required or not, and then just click on save. So in this way, we have configured this endpoint, configured this action event, we have entered the API endpoint, and we have created two fields for the required data. And then just click on save. So in this way, guys, you can also create actions as well. So basically, while creating triggers or actions, the process is almost the same. Now, guys, after creating an action, let's check this action in the front end as well. So the action event, the name of the action event is add contact to deal. Let's go to a workflow, scroll down, come to actions. Let's search for the same application, HubSpot CRM clone. And then in action event from the drop down, select this action event, add contact to deal. Connect our HubSpot CRM account and click on save. And yes, guys, here you can see that we have created two parameters, two fields. The first one was contact identifier value. So we can see the same label, and in the drop down below, using the inbuilt action, we have received a list of all the contacts from the HubSpot CRM account of the user and shown that list over here in the drop down. And after that, guys, in the next field, the next field which we have created is of deal ID. So in the drop down below, we have received a list of all the deals from the HubSpot CRM account and mentioned the list of those deals over here in the drop down below. So in this way, guys, we can see that the action which we have created over here is also working perfectly fine. So you can integrate or create multiple triggers and action by following this same process for the application which you are integrating inside Pabbly Connect. And guys, if you are from the team of the application, you can actually build your application and submit it for the approval. And once this application gets approved by the Pabbly Connect team, this will be publicly available to the user or to use on the Pabbly Connect platform and automate their work. And if not, if you are not from the application teams, but you have created or integrated an application inside Pabbly Connect, then if you want, you can also privately share this application to other users as well by inviting them. Just go to this sharing section over here, and then from here, you can actually share this application with other users as well. So I hope, guys, this video was helpful to you. If you have any doubts or queries, you can write them in the comment box below. So this is it for today's video, guys. Thank you. Have a great day.